it's a pleasure to have this kind of turnout for an event like this, because it just simply reinforces my conviction that the community really cares about itself, and when an opportunity, as we now have in front of us with the purchase of Civic Field, we need to hear from the public and the sort of desires that you have, the issues you want to raise, and I know that none of you are thinking the same thing about what this project should look like, because we all have our own opinions. I know graphically the way that whole field should look, and I'm not going to tell you what it looks like, because we really do have to go through a very public process, and the process that's been outlined, I think, will give lots of people an opportunity to engage and give their opinion, and hopefully every one of us will come out of the process at the end having it all want to look exactly the same. That's why I'm going to take my wife to dinner right after the meeting. So anyway, just welcome and enjoy the process, because I view this, and you get to participate, as a legacy that this period of time, it is a legacy that you folks will have the opportunity to leave for the community for generations. Stop and think about how long ago Civic Park was put in place. That's the same opportunity that we have now to really create a vision for the last large piece of property in our community to decide how we think it should look. So I don't want you to feel guilty, but just be sure you get it right. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it. My name is Carrie Height, and I'm the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Director for the City of Edmonds. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to welcome you all to our first open house for the Civic Center Master Plan. And as Dave has mentioned, this is really once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's a really not often that a city this size gets to look at 8 acres in their downtown corridor and mold and shape it for generations to come. And it's an amazing opportunity. And you all have taken time out of your busy schedules to be here tonight to help us do that. We have a pretty fun evening planned. It's a short presentation to get you all introduced to the site and to the things that we've been thinking about. And then we have some interactive activities to actually help us to hear the public more. So we won't be here with 100 people raising hands with question and answers, but we'll be mingling around the room to get some of your ideas on paper. I wanted to talk a little bit about our selection process for the design firm that we brought in to help us master plan the Civic Center. We have had many, many community members on and off over the years be interested in Civic and the master plan. And we selected a project advisory committee, and I would like the opportunity right now, if there's some of our project advisory committee members here, could you please stand so that we could recognize you and say thank you for your work? Thank you so much for being here. Our project advisory committee helped, some of them helped with the interview process. We had 8 firms that came in and interviewed for this process to help us master plan, to work with the Edmonds community. And we narrowed that down to 3. We interviewed 3, and the project advisory committee members that were on that interview committee, some of the staff members unanimously picked Walker Macy to help us design Civic Center. And some of you may know Walker Macy. They were recently in our community with the Marina Beach Master Plan. And they really have a knack for listening to the community. They don't come in pre-described of what they want to build in a town. They really listen, and they really help us mold and shape what the community says. So we're really excited to have them here. And before I introduce their main principal, and they're going to lead us through most of the presentation tonight, I wanted to talk a little bit about the acquisition of Civic. As most of you know, we have been wanting to purchase Civic Field from the school district many, many years. We've actually been in a long-term lease since 1976 and operating the Civic Center Field as a park. And it's been on all of our comprehensive plans, on our Parks, Recreation, and Open Space plans. And we finally had the opportunity a few years ago when the school district finally approached us and said, you know, we're ready to sell and we want to offer it to you first. And we said, okay. And we did have a lease option on it. If they ever wanted to sell, we got the first option to purchase it. So we rolled up our sleeves and we went after some grant funds to help us purchase that property. And the purchase price was $1.9 million, and we were able to secure a $1 million from the state of Washington and $500,000 from Snohomish County Conservation Futures. And so the city put in $400,000 of our capital dollars, and we were able to close the purchase of that in February of this year. What's important to know, and this will be sort of threaded in throughout tonight, is that the Conservation Futures money and the Recreation Conservation Office money from the state is specifically for open space and parkland. And so it comes with deed restrictions on it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight and what that means. But it means that out of that 8 acres, 6 of those acres will have deed restrictions on them. And what we cannot do on those are build buildings, put in a tremendous amount of impervious surface, cement, concrete, asphalt. We can put in pervious surface if we wanted to do pathways and any type of kind of meandering path or anything like that. We cannot put in parking lots on that. We cannot put in any type of new athletic fields, but we can keep the existing use as it is. So however much existing use we have, we can create that in the new plan for athletic fields. We cannot put in synthetic turf on those fields. So it really has to be green space, open space. It really is to preserve nature and to give people the opportunity to interact with nature. So they know it's an active park. They gave us money to support this active park. So we can create active, passive, we can create all sorts of things within this park. But there are some restrictions, and we don't know, there's a few questions that have come up, and it's pretty gray in some areas, and we'll have to really determine with Snohomish County and with the state if we're going to be allowed to do some of the things that have come up so far. But we're not ready to, we're just in the beginning process of molding and shaping it. Until we get to some alternative designs, we won't probably go back to the state and the county to talk about that. So those are the deed restrictions. And if some of you have been following the process, there were 2 streets and an alley that were never vacated down on Civic Field. And what we did was we negotiated with Snohomish County and the state to take the acreage of those streets and alley, which were almost 2 acres, and we concentrated them in the northeast corner of the property so that we could make sort of a continuous 2 acres of land that we could build on. So that could be parking lots or buildings or restrooms or whatever that is. So we have 2 acres concentrated in the northeast area that are not restricted by anything. We own them free and clear. So I know that was some of the questions that came up, so I wanted to make sure that we talked about that. And so without further ado, I would love to introduce Chris Jones from Walker Macy. He's a principal with Walker Macy. He helped guide us through the Marina Beach Master Plan, and he's back with a new team to help us work on the Civic Park Master Plan. So Chris.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Mayor. We're very happy to be here. I want to echo the mayor's comments. You know, the turnout here shows how important this project is to your community. And we're really here to shepherd through the process and be ears on the feedback that you give us so this park really reflects the community spirit of Edmonds. And I think we did that really successfully with Marina Beach. And as if you were part of the Marina Beach Master Plan, a lot of balancing competing needs, and I think this park will be very similar in that aspect. Before we get into the meat of this, we have just wanted to run you through what the plan is for this evening. As Carrie mentioned, we're going to have a quick presentation to kind of get you up to speed on the site, some of the existing programs that occur on site if you're not familiar with them. And then we're going to get into what are some of the possibilities and just start that conversation with you all. And as the mayor mentioned, you know, these processes are only successful if we get your feedback. And so the more input that you give us, the better the final plan is going to be. So we have a number of ways that we're going to get into of how you can engage in this process. This open house is one of them. We have an online open house we'll describe, and we hope you all get engaged in whatever way works best for you. So after the short presentation, we're going to have a quick question and answer. We're going to keep it short just because of time, but there's going to be team members around the different stations to answer your questions. So don't hesitate to call on us and ask us questions. And then we're going to have an open house style, and we're going to try to keep that to 45 minutes. We're not going to necessarily have a wrap up. We're going to report back to you at our next open house. So all the information that we gather today, we'll report out at the next open house. So just to introduce you to a little bit about Walker Macy. So Walker Macy, we're a Northwest landscape architecture, urban design, and planning firm. We have offices in Portland and Seattle. We're all out of the Seattle office, and we've been really focused on designing signature public open space along the West Coast, and I think that showed well in our interview process and is part of the reason why we're here today. And we want to bring our experiences to you. Not every park is the same, but there's a lot of lessons learned from other communities in which we've gone through this process, and we're here to share that with you. There's a lot of other members to this team that aren't here today, but I want to start with the folks that are representing the team here tonight. I'm going to start with Laura Rose, our lead design principal. Anne-Marie Schneider in the front row here is our project manager. And these folks will be at the station, so keep an eye on their faces. Ara Swanson in the back is with Enviro Issues, so they're a public involvement facilitator. They were involved with the Marina Beach Master Plan and also the waterfront access study, and starting to know your community very well. For architecture, Owen Richards is not here, but Owen Richards is an architect in Seattle. He's been integral to the design and development of many buildings within the Seattle Center and other significant open space. We'll be looking to KPFF, our civil engineer for sustainable stormwater and infrastructure strategies. And lastly, John Bales is our cost estimator. When we come back to you next time, we'll have rough order of magnitude costs for the different options that we'll be putting in front of you. And as Carrie said, Walker Macy, recently completed the Marina Beach Master Plan. It was very successful, and it's been adopted by City Council. And we're bringing a lot of the lessons learned from that public outreach process back to Civic Playfield. As we've mentioned, the public outreach process is very significant. We started with a robust stakeholder outreach process, meeting with the mayor, the Petanque Club. I see a lot of familiar faces of folks we've met with that have a stake in the site. We'll be conducting 3 in-person open houses and 3 online open houses over the course of the next 8 months. And some other ways for you to get engaged. We have these little green business cards at the front of the room, if you would grab them. We have an online open house where you could engage in the same boards and the same information we're presenting this evening. You could vote, you could comment, and that all comes back to us and Carrie Height. So we ask that you guys take these home and engage online, hand these out to folks so your friends and family, so they can do the same. We also set up a kiosk on site, which I've noticed some people have already commented on. We'll be updating that regularly. Much of it will be the open house content, and we're also going to be developing a way for you to engage with that kiosk in the future, to be determined.
I also wanted to mention that the bottom link, civicpark.edmondswa.gov, is our project site, and it's on the city's website. So if you go on the city's website, front page, you can see Civic Center Master Plan. Click on it, and you'll go right to the project site. All of the minutes, all of the agendas, the open houses, the link to the virtual open houses, all there, one click off the main site of the website.
Thank you, Carrie. So in summary, this public involvement process is really intended to get all of you engaged as frequently as possible prior to us reporting out to City Council and the Planning Board. So as I mentioned, we'll have 3 open houses. Each of those bars represents in-person and an online open house. So we'll have 3 of each, June, August, and October. Our next open house will be coming back to you to really present design alternatives and to regurgitate what we heard from you this evening. And with that, I will hand it off to Laura.
Thank you, Chris. This is on. Everybody can hear me?
Yeah.
Yes? So we just wanted to start by saying that we think Edmonds is an incredibly special and unique place, especially in this area for a town your size to have such spectacular views, such a lovely walkable downtown, historic buildings, all right here is just incredible. And then to be topping it off with an 8-acre downtown park is an opportunity that any city in the country, including many much larger cities, would be extremely jealous of. And so we really want to seize on that opportunity and make sure that we work with all of you to craft a vision that works for Edmonds and that feels as unique as the town itself is. We know that the town is blessed, again, with a wide range of parks. They vary greatly in nature. Many of them celebrate the natural history that you have here, the natural environment, from the Edmonds Marsh to Yost Park, of course the waterfront parks, and then City Park downtown being more of a community and recreational park. And so our challenge walking into this project is to ask all of you, what is it that Civic Center Playfield wants to be, and how can it complement these other parks and be something new that you don't already have in your city? We have looked comprehensively at all of the parks in town, and we know, that there are opportunities elsewhere. And so that means that we don't have to put everything in this park because there are, other activities and parks around town. It means you don't have to fit everything in 8 acres. At the same time, 8 acres is a lot of space, and we can do a lot in this park, and that's what we want to hear from you. In the immediate downtown area, of course, we've got Edmonds Marsh, City Park, Yost Park, Francis Anderson Center, and the open space associated with it, and the waterfront parks. And so that's really the immediate park context we're thinking of when we will think about what we want Civic Center Playfield to be. We've also begun looking at the park context, and so we're going to present these diagrams to you just to help you understand what we've noticed, some observations we've made, and there may be more that we hear from you as we go on. The first observation is that there's a side of the park that is more civic in nature, and that's the 6th Avenue side. It's closer to downtown, closer to Main Street, closer to the retail and restaurants, and so that may have implications for how we plan the site. We have multi-family zoning north and south of the park, and then as we transition across 7th Avenue and into the uphill neighborhood, it goes to single-family housing. We've also begun to think a lot about downtown connections, which is something that we know from other similar projects is really important to making a downtown park successful. We think that many people will be coming to this site up 5th Avenue, Bell Street, 6th Avenue. There will be a huge draw of people from the downtown area to that park. And then there's also sort of a loop that you could envision that may affect how the park is used, all the way up to the Edmonds Center for the Arts, which is a great cultural institution in your town. And we know that 4th Avenue has been identified in city planning documents as an arts corridor. And so again, that may influence some of our thinking about what this site means and what could occur on it. We've also looked at transit connections downtown, and I think the one thing of note, which I'm sure all of you who live here realize already, is how present and well connected the park is. There are 6 bus stops within a quarter-mile radius of the park. That's fantastic. And of course, we're walking distance from the train station as well as the ferry. So we know that downtown Edmonds and the park not only will serve the immediate community, but also has the potential to be a destination at certain times of year for visitors coming from afar. We've gone out on site and actually thought a lot about the experience of standing in the park and what it's like. And noticed something interesting, which is that when you're at that 6th Avenue edge, you don't really have great views because there are buildings blocking your view. As you move back towards 7th Avenue, kind of away from that built-up edge, suddenly you get glimpses of the mountains and the sound beyond. And certainly those views are very special and are something that we'll want to take into account as we plan the space. We've also noticed that the residential areas up on the hill look down over the park. And so for any of you who live in that zone, the park will actually, become your foreground to that waterfront and mountain view. And that, again, is something that we want to be sensitive of. And it's really an opportunity to create beauty in this place for everyone in the community who looks down into it. So Chris is going to talk a little bit about what happens in this park right now, and then I'll talk again about some possibilities.
Thank you, Laura. So I think one thing that's really exciting about Civic is that there's already great bones. There's great festivals and activities that already occur on site, many of which some of us don't even know about. Some of us know a lot about. I would say one of the most significant is the Taste. The Taste takes over the park once a year. And as we think about master planning Civic Playfield, I think we need to think about what future festivals may be part of the park, what current festivals will remain as part of the park, and what impact some of those festivals will have on the future configuration of the park. It also hosts a significant amount of active recreation, from lacrosse to tennis to basketball to petanque. We met with the petanque club, very active group, and we were thankful to meet with them. Very energetic and bring great energy, and really an element of the park that really brings a sense of safety to the park because they program it so frequently. We think that's a great attribute to Civic. There's also two existing structures in the park that you may be aware of. There's the grandstands. It's currently undergoing a structural review, and Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say late summer we'd have a better understanding of the structure and if it could remain, if it needs to go. It is safe for the time being, we've mentioned though, so if you run the grandstands now, you're safe, which is a good thing. The Boys and Girls Club, it's another facility that's been there for over 50 years. The Boys and Girls Club has expressed to us in the city that they want to remain in that building and want to continue to operate, and that's a negotiation that will be ongoing with the city. And as Carrie mentioned, there's site restrictions on this piece of property. The 6 acres she referred to is on the east side, which has the deed restrictions, no parking, no limited pervious surfaces, and then the 2 acres are exempt from those deed restrictions. And I'm going to hand it back to Laura.
Thank you.
I think I said northeast, what I meant was northwest. And so the white line is the 2 acres on the northwest portion. Currently on that 2 acres, you'll find the tennis courts, the basketball court, the Boys and Girls Club building, some of the track and some of the field, and a petanque court. So my apologies. I did say northeast. It was northwest. There you go.
So we wanted to talk a little bit about what it means to create a destination, especially in a city that already has so many wonderful other destinations. When we are working on the waterfront or in any place that has a spectacular natural setting, there is less that is needed in terms of landscape and activities and special features to draw people there because the attraction is the view or the natural landscape. On the flip side, when we're working on a downtown park like Civic Playfield, we really need to create a destination. We need a reason that people will come here as opposed to go to any number of the other amazing parks that this town has. And so that often requires more features, more unique activities to really make it safe and make it feel special. We've also wanted to point out that right now the site is incredibly flexible. So it really can accommodate lots of recreation, huge multi-use playing fields, and we can all understand intuitively why that is so easy to transform into a large festival site. However, when it's not being used for recreation or it's not being used for a festival, it's pretty plain in character. And so then our challenge is what do we add to this place that makes it feel special if you're just there on an early morning walk with your grandchildren or there in the evening after work. You want it to feel like a special place that belongs in the city. And so we wanted to just put this out there. As the mayor said, probably all of you have different ideas about the character of this potential park. And one easy framework for thinking about this is sort of overall potential park themes. We could think of this park as being very civic, with a lot of downtown-focused character and events. We could think of it as being very passive and natural in character, or we could think of it as remaining very active and really continuing to support ongoing recreational needs. Or likely it will end up being some combination of these three themes, or potentially another theme that we haven't thought of. And so if you have a vision like this for the park, we certainly want to hear that in our outreach. So just to get everybody's juices flowing and kind of help people imagine what could be, we've put together lists of potential park programs. These are not meant to be prescriptions or meant to kind of box you in and say you have to select from these, but they're just meant to help you imagine what could be in this park in addition or in place of what is there now. And so civic type features could include everything from plaza space and promenades to small water features, perhaps a cafe or concession area where you could get food, restrooms and other services that you might associate with a more active park. And we are going to show you precedent images from other similar downtown parks, again, just to kind of help everyone think about what could be in this space. So promenades or more urban walks could support markets and festivals. Multi-use plazas can be designed so that they are wonderful when they're active as well as beautiful when they're empty. Food and water in downtown parks are something that we know from experience are really great things that help parks, to make these downtown parks feel special and feel active. And it doesn't have to be large scale. It could be a place where you can just, grab a quick sandwich and then sit outside. It doesn't necessarily even have to be a permanent structure. It could be seasonal. And water could be anything from a small model boat basin to a fountain to some kind of small interactive feature. Rain and sun protection is something we always think about in spaces like this, particularly if it's a park that we think people might want to spend a few hours in. It's always nice to have a spot you can get out of the rain or get under a canopy. We'll be thinking a lot about kind of landscape character and what we can do beyond just a flat field to make this park feel special. And so some ideas here. Obviously a multi-use lawn could remain and also could support other uses. The park could include gardens. It could include environmental features such as stormwater gardens or opportunities for education. Berms, shade trees, kind of quieter passive picnic areas. All of these are typical features that you might find in a downtown park. And again, these are just examples from some other projects to get you thinking. And then finally, active and recreational activities. In addition to what occurs now, there are some opportunities that we don't see, and they could be added. Things like a jogging path or an exercise path, perhaps not a formal track, but something more multi-use that still allows people to run and walk. Opportunities for creative play, so maybe not just your typical playground, but something that is unique because it's in the center of town and might represent your community. Classes have been brought up, small games that the Parks Department might be able to sponsor. All of these things could help kind of add to the liveliness and character of the park. One thing we often talk about when we talk about play in downtown parks is that this is an opportunity to do something a little bit, not just the standard play equipment. So do something custom that really reflects the character of the town we're working in. And so that's an opportunity we see here. Games, everything from shuffleboard, bocce, petanque, checkers. And then finally, events and festivals. We know that the park already hosts very large-scale events and festivals. We think we should also be thinking about smaller-scale community festivals and events, and even performances. These might be things that don't take up the entire park, but happen in one area and let other activities go on at the same time. Everything from markets and music to culinary events, art installations. And then we did just want to, for your reference, provide some plans of other parks. We have this on the board as well, and so you can study it up close. But we have selected a handful of other parks, including a number that are in the immediate region, which you may know, just to help everybody understand what 8 acres means for a park and what some other parks of similar scale have managed to accommodate. This is a project that I worked on prior to Walker Macy. It's 12 acres, and I just like to use it as an example because within that 12 acres, we were able to accommodate an incredible range of garden space, passive landscape, as well as multi-use playing fields and space for festivals and events. And so it we don't have to think of these acres at Civic Field as singular. You know, we can subdivide the park and create different sort of outdoor rooms, so to speak, that accommodate different uses and characters. And all of these images are from that park and just give you a sense of how much you really can do with 8 acres. So we'll close with this. Again, we want to make sure that we craft a vision that's specific to Edmonds. So all of these images that we've put out there are not design proposals. Again, they're just meant to kind of help everybody think and imagine. And we look forward to going to the boards. I think Chris is just going to summarize the boards and then we'll break down.
Thank you, Laura. So for tonight's program, we have 9 boards in the back of the room. We have 3 boards in front of the room. There are 4 of those 9 boards are informational boards, so that's going to provide you with additional background info on the site, how it's currently used. It's going to talk through the design process a little bit and the schedule that we talked through a little bit before. Again, to Laura's point, we have a board that talks about scale of the park relative to other parks in the region and further afield. Some of the context drawings that Laura presented earlier are also on that board. Then 5 of those boards on my right are boards that we want to get your input on. So those are interactive boards. There are pins on a small table in the back of the room. And we want you to grab a cup of pins and we want you to engage in these boards and identify which program elements that you would like to see remain on the site and what elements you want to see potentially added to Civic Field as part of this master planning process. So these are all color-coded per the descriptions that Laura gave. And then we also have, so there's several boards that talk about possibilities. If we didn't cover something on the boards that you would like to see in the park, there's a list on the right-hand side of one of the boards that you could add to it if we didn't identify one of those program elements that you would like to see. And then Laura also brought up the park themes. We'd like to get an initial thought from you all of what you would like the priority to be within Civic Playfield, whether it's a civic space, whether it's an active space, or if it's a passive park. And then if that doesn't boggle your mind and we didn't address one of your questions through that process, there's another board that you could put a comment on it. There's sticky notes on that same table that you could fill out. If there's part of the park that you specifically like and you want us to know about it, please put a sticky note on it. And then in the front of the room, we have 3 model boards. They're aerial plans of the park. And we have corresponding play pieces, if you will, that correspond to the Civic. Orange, Civic for Civic. Active uses are blue. And passive uses are green. So we're hoping you all could come up here and engage with the puzzle pieces, lay out some preferred organizations of the park, and we're going to have people taking pictures. If there's something that you want us to take a picture of, please track one of us down and we'll come and take a picture of it. And it'd be useful for you to talk us through that as well. So I think we have 45 minutes. We're not going to regroup, so when you're done with the boards and interacting with the design team, you're free to leave. Again, the online open house cards are in the back of the room, and we thank everybody. And we're going to take 10 minutes of questions, and if there's additional questions, we'll answer them at the boards, and Ara's going to moderate that.
Okay, thank you. Again, I am Ara Swanson with Enviro Issues, and I'm here to just help moderate the next 10 minutes of Q&A. There's a lot of you here. You might have some burning questions. We want to save that 45 minutes for a lot of one-on-one question time. So if your question doesn't get answered, find anyone and be sure to ask your question. and definitely provided some feedback. So just a couple real quick ground rules. I will repeat back the question just so everyone in the room can hear it and so that our folks can be ready to answer your question. Please limit your question to just once because we've got a lot of folks here. We want to make sure as many of you get an opportunity to ask. You can, excuse me. Yes?
Does this assume that the Taste of Edmonds will continue in the field the way it has in the past with parking on the field and everything else?
Okay. The question is, does this plan assume that the Taste of Edmonds continues as it has in the past, including walking on the fields?
This plan doesn't assume anything, although we have had a chance to speak with all the stakeholders and people that are actually currently programming and planning at Civic Stadium, including the Chamber, which hosts the Taste, and they definitely have an interest in staying on site for the festival. So I want to tell you that this plan tonight is our first really big open house to get some ideas from you, the community, and it is a blank slate. So we want to hear from you. Do you want the Taste to be there? Do you not want the Taste to be there? Let us know back there on your little pinpoints, but we do know that the Chamber does have an interest in that. So there you go.
Okay, great. Yes, gentleman in the back.
1.8 million is obviously one sense a lot of money. Another sense is a pittance for 8 acres downtown. What can you explain to us the rationale for a financing plan that defined in advance what you could do and not do on 75% of the land you just bought?
Okay. So the question is, can you explain the financing plan for the property and what has been purchased?
Yeah, we actually did negotiate with the school district a $1.9 million price, and I think what I understand your question to be is more of the $1.5 million of grant money we received to restrict the land. Is that where you're going with that? That was definitely a council decision and a mayor decision to be able to receive grant money. It's $1.9 million is a lot of money in our capital dollar system when we have streets that are not being repaired and we have parks that are, we have some deferred maintenance. And so when you look at 1.9, you might not think it's a lot, but it is a lot in our capital program. So it was very helpful to get that $1.5 million. I will tell you that $1.5 million does come with restrictions. However, if the city ever wanted to not adhere to those restrictions, we would need to pay that money back or mitigate it or find other open space. So it's not it is a restriction, but there is some opportunity to mitigate that if the city chooses not to abide by that.
Okay. Yes, right here.
Yeah, it's 25% of the park, as I understand it. Can you describe a little bit more what are the conditions and constraints for that?
I can, yeah.
Can we just repeat the question so everybody can hear?
The question up here is also in relation to the deed restriction, and the deed restriction being 25% of the property, and what are the restrictions that are placed on this property? So I will tell you the 25% has no restrictions. There's no restrictions. You can build a community center, you can build restrooms, parking lots, whatever you want to do. It is owned by the city without deed restrictions. The other 6 acres, the 75%, was purchased with grant dollars that we have to keep it a park in perpetuity. It is a park, it's open space, it's grass, and that doesn't include recreational buildings. It does not include buildings at all. It does limit the amount of impervious surface, meaning asphalt, concrete, any kind of surface that's going to take away the green space and contribute to the environmental factors of the community. So there's some restrictions on that. Other restrictions include synthetic turf, again, because it doesn't drain as well and it's not green space anymore. So it's a park in perpetuity. Unless the city decides that they want to choose not to have it a park, then we would have to mitigate those funds and either find other open space or pay those back. Does that answer your question?
Yes, gentleman here in blue, and then next will be the flag.
However this ends up, it looks like it's going to require some very heavy maintenance versus what's going on today. My question is, has the budget for operations going to dictate ultimately what you're going to have.
Okay, so the question is about maintenance and operations and budget moving forward to take care of that park.
It won't dictate the plan, but it is a balancing act. And so as the community works on molding and shaping this park, we will work with Walker Macy on cost estimates for the capital, but also operations and maintenance as well. And that is the discussion that we will have to have with the city council.
Okay, gentlemen here.
With regard to the Boys and Girls Club, which as this is a two-part question, first of all, it was mentioned early on, not at this meeting, that there is a study going on that building as well as to the structural integrity. So I have a question if that is true, if any decision, if any judgment has been made as far as the structural integrity of keeping that building. Secondly, if the building is kept, can it be shared by the community as well as the Boys and Girls Club? So they have, for instance, typical operating hours early in the morning until after school. Then it would be available weekends, evenings for community activities. So it could have a kitchen and meeting rooms and so on.
Okay, two-part question. One, is the Boys and Girls Club building also have any structural concerns? And second, if not, can it be preserved for use with Boys and Girls Club as well as the broader community?
The answer to that question is that we are currently not doing a structural integrity assessment on that building. The Boys and Girls Club have been in it, and it seems to be in okay shape. There is, however, some interest in learning the historic significance of that building, and so that's what we're starting to work on, is the historical significance of the Boys and Girls Club. The second part of that question was, could it be shared use, Boys and Girls Club and community use? Right now, I will tell you the building that exists is really small for the needs of the Boys and Girls Club and also for shared use. It has a couple rooms and a gym on top. And so if there was some interest to have a shared use building on site, my recommendation would be to either expand that building or take that building down and build something new, or do something, a combination of those two. So it's just not going to be, it doesn't have the capacity to serve both the Boys and Girls Club and the community.
Okay, gentlemen in the glasses and the blue in the back.
Thank you. Carrie, you talked about the northwest section of the 8 acres being, 2 of them being unprotected. I'm talking now about the southeast section of the property. You have a very large tree, 45 feet tall, higher than even light standards, with a spread of over 35 feet. Is that tree protected?
Okay, quick recap. The question is this tree, which, is it that tree? That tree, is it protected?
Is it protected? It probably is not protected by deed. I mean, we can do whatever we want with that land, minus putting concrete and cement and whatever down. That said, we always are careful when we look at taking trees down in the city, and we have our own tree code, and we look at trees, when we look at and evaluate them for disease before we take them down. If we need to take them down for some kind of development that makes more sense for the greater good, we'll look at that. So that's your answer.
I'm sure you understand that that tree is the only largest feature in the entire parkway.
I do understand that.
So that sounds like an excellent
I
comment.
can hear that real loud and clear.
Thank you so much.
That sounds like an excellent comment to share later or on the online open house. Okay, gentlemen in the glasses right here.
In regard to that tree, I'm sorry.
Two handsome guys were talking about.
Two gentlemen in the glasses.
I see, if I understand correctly, the 6 acres that is restricted may not have impervious surface. Therefore, the skate park, of course, is concrete and is impervious, and it looks like about 80% of that is in the restricted area, so I take it that that will have to be removed.
Okay, so
Repeat the question.
yeah, so the question is, for the 6 acres that are deed restricted, that also include impervious surfaces, would the skate park that's currently there have to be removed, or?
It would not have to be removed, and I'm going to clarify my no impervious surface statement earlier. We cannot have more than 10% of impervious surface, and that's minus trails. So we can put as many trails as we want in, and it doesn't count towards impervious surface. And then we can have up to 10% more of the land covered with impervious surface.
Okay, so we're going to do 3 more questions. We're just about out of time, so we'll do the other gentleman in the glasses.
I know the drainage is a continuing issue. We've lived over the area for 40 years, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. I'm not a hydrologist, I'm not a climate guy, but I think it's obviously an issue that's going to deteriorate, and I'm wondering where the funds are coming from that are going to take care of that problem down the road.
Okay, so question is concern about drainage on site and where the funds would be to take care of that as a future problem or solution.
Thanks for the question. Again, I'm going to go back to the original question about maintenance and operations, and it's going to be a balancing issue for us around capital development and maintenance and operations. That said, we have the opportunity to address those drainage issues in the development of this park. And I hear you loud and clear because our park crew is out there daily during the rainy season, dragging that track and dragging that southeast corner that just is completely flooded. So we know about the issue, we're paying attention to it, and we can deal with it in the development of the park.
Okay, right here.
Is there a consideration to have car parking on the way I ask the question is, I hope the answer is no. The car parking on the very amount of precious land that you have.
Okay, so the question is, what about car parking?
Well, that's a good question, and again, I will tell you we have a blank slate. So although I would love to say no to your question because I'm a parks director, not a parking director, we need to hear from the community. If there is interest in this community to have parking on that northwest corner, then that's a community discussion and a council decision. So what I would encourage you to do is make your desire and your need known back in the boards, go online to the virtual open house and make that desire and interest known as well.
Okay, we're going to take one more question. Yes, the lady in the back.
Hi, I go to Edmonds Bible Church, and you know our parking lot is next to your field, and it's used continually by everybody. They think it's the City of Edmonds parking lot. We have lots of damage in it from everything goes on in there. They drive across that. So we just kind of know you were not. I know our pastor went to your first meeting, but I noticed our name's not up there. But we're concerned about our parking lot becoming the city's parking lot and how the city is going to help us out with this.
Okay, so some concerns about adjacent church parking lots and how the city might help alleviate some of those parking pressures.
Yeah, we have been in touch with your pastor. He's been in my office a couple times, and we did talk to him as part of the stakeholder interviews, and we are aware of your concern. I think one of the biggest ones was the impact of the Taste of Edmonds and the big trucks, and so we got him in contact with the sponsors of the Taste of Edmonds so that could be mitigated. The other way that we tend to think about this park, and I think Laura talked about it a little bit, is looking at the park edges, and as we develop and mold and shape this park, trying to create some natural edges that will really define the park and not spill out into neighbors' yards and the condo owners and the alleys and the parking lots that are adjacent to the park. There's some really good examples of that, how to really have some natural edges so that it's, and some openings, so it's welcoming, but it also is defined.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the Q&A. I know there are more questions. Feel free to find any of the staff here to ask them. Take a look at all the boards that are now available in the back. Take a look, add your feedback. And again, the online open house will be live with all of this information tomorrow morning, so you can come back and take a look again.
And before we break, I wanted to just mention that we have two of our city council members here tonight, Mike Nelson and Dave Teitzel, and I wanted to thank them for being here, and you certainly can ask them questions as well. They'll be part of the decision-making process of the Civic Park. So thanks for being here.